The good folks at Comics for Fun and Profit have been doing 2 episodes a week for quite some time now, and it's all thanks to, first of all, Jason, and second of all, our patrons, who allow us to add the space on our server, broadcast more, store more, share more with you, the listeners. I'm envious of those of you who have unlimited storage and media server capabilities. We pay for ours here at the C4FAP. It ain't cheap. We thank you so much for those of you who go to patreon.com/comicsfunprofit and contribute at any level to say thanks, to say, I want to be a part of your Slack channel conversations. I want to get exclusives. I want to get early access. I want to get ad-free access. I want to get swag. I want to get some free stuff. Whatever your reasoning is, we appreciate it at any level because it does make a difference. So from the bottom of Kyle and I and Jason's heart, thank you for contributing.
Aloha, it's Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing a New York Times bestseller and audio #1 bestseller, 5-time Bram Stoker Award winner, 4-time Scribe Award winner, Inkpot winner, anthology editor, comic book writer, executive producer. He's written, he's a playwright and writing teacher, lecturer, and more importantly, a dog lover. Jonathan Maberry. Jonathan, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Jason, and aloha to you too.
Thank you.
It's nice to be on the show, and I'm having a good work day here in cloudy San Diego, but yeah, I'm doing good.
No, thank you. So Jonathan is here to promote Hearts and Mind, a Joe Ledger and Violin adventure from Crystal Lake Comics. Now, this is a backer kit campaign that's going to start on June 11th. Now, please, check out this campaign when it launches on June 11th, and also check to see when it ends too as well. Now, I want to go over some of Jonathan's amazing past work experience. He studied journalism in college. He was a bouncer at a strip club, and he worked as a bodyguard. We have to throw that in, Jonathan. The bouncer at a strip club. Because if it's a bouncer, then it's like, okay, whatever. Strip club, oh my God.
I'll give you the short version of that.
Okay.
A friend of mine, wife of one of my buddies from high school, was the kitchen manager at this club.
Okay.
So she ran the kitchen and originally hired me to work in the kitchen because I needed a job at the time, and she would give good money. Not really a strip club sort of fan myself. But one of the first nights I was working, there was a fight, and the bouncer who was there was the first guy on the floor.
Oh God, that's not good.
So I stepped in and was able to resolve the situation pretty easily. I've been doing martial arts it's actually now 60 years. And I was able to resolve it pretty quickly. And they started giving me shifts as a bouncer, and eventually I got promoted up to cooler, which is the head bouncer. A club that unfortunately was a horrible, violent, nasty club frequented mostly by bikers and construction workers. So there was always trouble. And we were fighting probably 3 to 4 times a week, every week for 5 years.
Yes.
So it was no fun, but I got a lot of useful anecdotes that I have since, folded into my writing.
Yes, because and listeners, and I told Jonathan this, that I wanted to include some of this because these experiences, you bring it to you bring it to your work when you're writing, and there's a little bit more weight and when you write some of these.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a fan of bad action scenes. In fact, it always everybody has something that triggers them, and when I'm watching a fight scene and I see it done wrong, which is pretty much the common thing in film and TV, it really annoys me. I understand that they have to make the fight scene longer and more dynamic looking to be entertaining, but they have people do completely stupid and impossible things. Some of the old urban legends that are completely nonsense, like hitting the base of the nose to drive the nose bone into the brain, completely impossible physiologically. The ninja death touch, all that. And I taught, one of the things I did early in my career is I taught martial arts history at Temple University for 14 years. Also taught jiu-jitsu and women's self-defense. And the martial arts history, part of what we were doing was dispelling the myths and misconceptions about the martial arts. So when I started writing, I wanted to make sure that my fight scenes stuck to realism. Even if the character was up against a monster like a vampire, there's still a set of physical laws that would apply to that particular thing. Everything has to have its own set of physics to it. And my fight scenes, adapted to that. I even teach workshops on it. In fact, June 22nd, I'm teaching a workshop about writing fight and action scenes. It's going to be a Zoom workshop. And like all my workshops, it supports no-kill animal shelters.
Oh, okay.
So the profits go to that, and it's fun because I've taught this class all over the country, and I think in Italy and England too. And it's a lot of fun. It's, talking about what a fight scene really is and what makes it dynamic. So, and a lot of my friends are actually professional stuntmen too. The whole stunt team from Marvel, from the buddies of mine, and they're big fans of my Joe Ledger books.
Oh, nice. That is so cool. Jonathan, I have to continue on because if not, we're going to be talking all these other stuff, and then I don't want the last second to be, oh yeah, don't forget to back your campaign. And listeners, Jonathan said that, he is also an eighth degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. He is, now correct me if I'm wrong, currently an editor at Weird Tales magazine.
I am the editor of Weird Tales magazine.
I'm sorry?
I'm the editor of Weird Tales magazine.
I'm sorry, the editor, I'm sorry. President of the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. And he was named one of today's top 10 horror writers. That is nice.
Yeah, that was an unexpected one. That was a few years ago. But it's kind of a weird thing because fiction was not my plan when I started writing. I went to school in a journalism scholarship with every intention of becoming an investigative journalist. You figure I was in high school right after Watergate, so I wanted to be the next Woodward and Bernstein.
Yes.
All of my writer buddies wanted to go in become journalists. But halfway through college, I took a class on magazine feature writing. So I switched from news writing to writing articles about, at first, martial arts and self-defense. I wrote about 600 of those. And then I wrote another 600 articles on other subjects. And started writing nonfiction books. My first published book is actually a martial arts book. It was the textbook for Temple University's judo class.
Yes.
But while I was doing nonfiction books, I decided to do one book on folklore, which is a little outside. I don't have a degree in folklore. I don't, but I've had exposure to it my whole life through my grandmother, who was. If you ever read the Harry Potter books, you know who Luna Lovegood is. She's Luna Lovegood as an old lady. I mean, she believed in everything.
Yeah.
Wonderful woman. And she taught me all about all the monsters and things that go bump in the night. So I wrote one book about that. And by researching that, it got me interested in writing fiction that dealt with these folkloric monsters. And then I fell in love with fiction. And now it dominates my life.
Now, I'm going to run through some of your novels that you've worked on because I want to circle back. We're going to circle back to a book that we talked before the interview because, like you said, fiction is your life. Okay, so of course, you wrote the Joe Ledger series. You showed the nonfiction book that you wrote, Judo and You, that came out in 1990. A fictional work series, Rot and Ruin series, the Pine Deep trilogy, and also I have to mention this. You wrote the novelization of The Wolfman. Now, this is the movie that starred Benicio del Toro. If I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong. This is one of your Bram Stoker awards, right? That one of Bram.
Actually, no, that one was my first New York Times bestseller and won the Scribe Award.
Okay, I'm sorry, the Scribe.
Yeah, my first Bram Stoker award was Ghost Road Blues, which is actually my first novel. It won for best first novel. It was also up for novel of the year, but I lost to some kid named Stephen King.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a promise. He might have a career ahead of him. Who knows?
Who knows? I know. And also, too, And also too, you have written for a young adult X-File novel, Devil's Advocate, that featured a young Dana Scully.
Yeah.
For comics, you have an amazing body of work in comics. I've read some of these. Marvel Universe versus the Punisher. I love that. That was great. That was a great series. Marvel Universe versus Wolverine. Doom War miniseries. Now you wrote that, the artist was Scott Eaton. I love that miniseries. That was great.
Oh, thanks. Well, elements of that and of the previous run, because Doom War was a Black Panther run.
Yes.
It was originally supposed to be my second arc on Black Panther. I did one arc called Power, and then that was going to be the next one, but they pulled it out to make it its own thing. But parts of that and of the previous run, Power, formed about 40% of the movie Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I was the first one to put Shuri in the armor. In fact, during Reggie Hudlin's run, he
Yes.
was gearing up for me to take over. So he had written T'Challa to be injured and Shuri to step up to be the Panther. So I wound up ghostwriting that entire thread, the Shuri thread, in his last arc to set up my run. So I was actually the one to put Shuri in the armor. I put her up against Namor. I created the Midnight Angels and created the character of Anika. So it was bizarre that they used so much of it in the movie. And when my son and we were invited to the Hollywood premiere, I didn't know how much they used until I was sitting in the Dolby Theater with the cast and watching it. And I was like, that's mine. And hear actors who are playing characters I created is surreal,
That is amazing. Jonathan, thank you for sharing that. Thank you very much. And like I said, we have to continue on, because if not, man, we're going to be stuck on this. Sorry. Also, one, I've heard rave reviews about the V Wars from IDW, and also you were the executive producer for the Netflix TV series. I have to check out that series, V Wars.
The premise of that is I read a lot of science, because I've read a lot of weird science thrillers that, it's based mostly on real science and then a little bit of fiction. And I had read an article way back in 2010 about how melting polar ice was releasing old viruses and bacteria trapped in permafrost. And, a writer's job is to look at something like that and think, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
So I had been asked to edit an anthology for IDW Publishing. And I suggested a shared world anthology where I would write a short novel, about a 50,000 word novel, and break it up and then have other writers come in and write field reports for, dealing with a story where a disease is released that triggers a dormant gene, and that gene presents with the qualities that were in the past the basis for beliefs in vampires. A thirst for blood, extraordinary strength, some physical changes, and so on. But it was science fiction, not supernatural. We did 4 of the shared world anthologies, and I did 2 runs of the comic books. In fact, this is the second run, and Joe Ledger actually guest starred in that. And Netflix turned it into a series, but unfortunately, a plague show launching at the beginning of COVID was unfortunate timing.
Yes.
Even though we were the #1 show in 120 global markets, Netflix chickened out and canceled us because it was a plague show.
Yeah.
So the actor who started it, Ian Somerhalder from Vampire Diaries, he and I are working together to come up with a new version of it that we can shop elsewhere.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, that'd be great. Okay. Thank you. Now for audiobooks, Lullaby and the Bewilderness series, is that correct?
Yeah. Lullaby was there was something that happened a while ago. One of the editors, the senior editor at Audible, was trying to prove a model that if you give something away for free, that the people who get it will then investigate the writer and see what else they have that they can purchase.
Yes.
And he asked me to write a short story, which I did, called Lullaby. And it went up there. I got paid for it, but it went up there for free. Got a huge number of downloads. And that proved the model for what's now known as the Audible Plus catalog, where they give stuff away and then you get, you can. And a little later on, because of the success of that, he asked me to write a serialized novel. So I wrote a kind of my version of a multiverse. If you remember the old show Sliders?
Yes.
A little bit of that, where a dimensional doorway is opened.
Yeah.
And in my story, they're trying to find a parallel Earth where there are no humans, but so that we can use the natural resources and maybe extend our population and so on. But unfortunately, in the process, it kicks the door open to all of the variations on Earth. So creatures of all kinds start flooding into our dimension, and that became a three part serialized novel. I had a lot of fun with it, and it was a big hit on Audible too.
Ah, that's great. All right. Also, too, you have contributed, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've contributed maybe one or more stories to monstrous books. I know you've done one in the anthology, The Classic Monsters Unleashed,
and Shakespeare Unleashed, and the Kolchak anthology. I'm in all three.
That's right. I was trying to remember that one, the Kolchak one. Oh, how much fun did you have writing the Kolchak story?
Oh, it was great. I loved the show when I was a kid. I still think the original Night Stalker movie is one of the scariest movies ever.
Yes.
The show was great. Darren McGavin's one of my favorite actors anyway.
Yeah.
So it was great. And my buddy James Aquilone now has the rights to it, and he's going to be doing more and more Kolchak stuff. And I have in one of my upcoming issues of Weird Tales magazine, we're going to have a Carl Kolchak short story.
Nice.
So a brand new short story.
Oh my God, nice. All right. Before I jump into other stuff, let's circle around. You love fiction. We talked about it. There's a Conan paperback on your shelf.
Right there.
Please tell the listeners. Yeah. So
that Conan the Wanderer was one of the old Lancer paperbacks. Was the very first book I ever bought with my own money as a kid. Money I earned or allowance money, and it made me. I fell in love immediately with Conan, the character Conan, but with the genre of sword and sorcery fantasy. Interestingly enough, there's like weird connections all the way through this. So the first weird connection is, even I'd fall in love with those books. And when I got to 7th grade, my middle school librarian was the secretary for a couple different clubs of professional writers, one that met in Philly and one that met in New York. The Philly club was called the Hyborian Legion, and it was all epic fantasy writers.
Yes.
Sprague de Camp was one of the founding members of it. So I got to know Sprague de Camp, who was, he was the guy that brought Conan back from obscurity after Howard had committed suicide in the 30s. And he brought the character back. So I got to know him. I got to know Lynn Carter, Bjorn Nyborg, the three living writers who were working with the unfinished Conan manuscripts to, finish them and put them out, and also take some of Howard's other stuff and turn them into Conan stories. There were 10 or 12 volumes of the original series by Lancer. So that's one thing. And he was my, it was Sprague de Camp introduced me to H.P. Lovecraft and a bunch of other things. Lifelong mentor. But the second thing is the group in New York was a variety of genre writers whoever was in town. This is 1970. Whoever was in town, they would have this publisher would throw a penthouse party, and my middle school librarian again was the secretary for that group. So I got to meet, at 12 years old, got to meet Ray Bradbury, Richard Matheson, Arlen Ellison, Avram Davidson. Robert Bloch. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was every giant of the industry at the time. And Bradbury and Matheson became my mentors for 3 years. And I even got the very last cover quotes from each of them before they died. They meant so much to me. But going back to the Weird Tales connection, or the Robert E. Howard connection, all the Conan stories were published in Weird Tales. So one day when I had just met the woman who is now my wife, but it was some years ago. We were looking through one of my photo albums, and she sees a photo of me standing with Sprague de Camp, and she's like, "Why are you there with Uncle Sprague?" Now, it turned out he wasn't her blood uncle, but he was her grandfather's best friend. Her grandfather was the literary agent for Robert E. Howard. There's a story that was circulated by a guy named Glenn Lord that he was the literary agent. He wasn't. He worked for the Otis Klein Literary Agency. When Klein died, the agency passed to Klein's junior partner, Oscar J. Friend, who was my wife's grandfather. He literally asked landlord to drive the box of unfinished Howard manuscripts from Brooklyn to Sprague de Camp in Villanova, PA. He didn't give them to him. Oscar gave them to him. But Glenn was the last man standing, so he got to write the story, and that appears in a lot of the biographies. But in any case, the Otis Klein / Oscar Friend agency represented almost everyone who wrote for Weird Tales, which was huge. And he ghost edited or co-edited some of the issues, kind of like for his friends who were editing the magazine at the time. So that's the second part that's kind of weird. My connection to not only Conan, but also the Weird Tales magazine. And then roll forward, I got a call out of the blue from a producer friend of mine who had partnered with someone to bring back Weird Tales, because it's a magazine that's been around since 1923, folded several times. They were bringing it back. And at first they asked me just to contribute a story to it. And I wrote a sword and sorcery story for it. And just after the story was approved, they told me that the original editor was sick, and they needed to replace him. So they asked me if I would step up to be editor. And I'm still editing Weird Tales magazine. And one of my favorite issues we've done was a sword and sorcery issue. I got Michael Moorcock to give me an excerpt from his latest Elric novel, and Neil Gaiman to give me an essay about Michael Moorcock. And it's nuts. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it. And more recently, I was asked to write a Solomon Kane short story, which I did, which is available online somewhere. Just look up Solomon Kane Maberry. It's called The Hound of God. Yeah. And there's a very good chance I'll be writing some Conan comics if things go well. So I seem to have a lifelong connection with Conan the Barbarian.
But Jonathan, first off, thank you very much for sharing that. But then also, too, I have to say, it's almost like destiny that you're meant to be a writer. Because, Richard Matheson, Ray Bradbury, Harlan Ellison, because I know Harlan Ellison's his reputation, his little quirks, and he's not shy about.
No, he was a great guy. He was a good friend, and I miss him.
Yes, no, but to you, he's a friend. But oh my God, and for you to be, 6 degrees to Robert E. Howard connection. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. And actually, I've got all the file boxes from the old agency. I have the original typescript manuscript for People of the Black Circle, which is one of the better Conan stories.
Yes.
And I have the original manuscript for Cool Air by H.P. Lovecraft. When I saw them in the file boxes after, he had died in 1963, Oscar Friend, and they went to my wife's father's house, and they were in the attic when he passed in 2012. They were her brother was going to throw the boxes out, thinking they were just. But Sarah, my wife, started looking through them and said, "Oh my God, Jonathan knows all these guys," and she brought all the boxes home, and I have them here. I started looking through them. I swear, every time I opened a folder, it was like crack. There was just like another thing that buzzed me out. It was nuts. The contracts, correspondence with Isaac Asimov, God. It was amazing. At some point, I'll get it all properly indexed and donated to a museum somewhere.
Yes. And thank God for your wife that she saved this.
Oh, yeah.
It
has been a weird life with a lot of odd coincidences and a lot of encounters with people that, growing up as a poor kid in the inner cities in Philadelphia, there's no way to predict that those paths would cross.
Yes.
So my life hasn't always been good, but it has never been boring. And it continues that way too. In my professional career, I became friends with George Romero. When I was 10 years old, I snuck into the movies to see the world premiere of Night of the Living Dead. Roll forward to about 10 years ago, he and I are editing an anthology of Night of the Living Dead stories. And that's now being considered as a possible TV show for one of the streaming services.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah. Became friends with Stan Lee, which, it's like he's one of the gods of my personal pantheon.
Yes.
I was at an event in Texas, and he was there as a guest, and he brought over a stack of my Captain America Hail Hydra graphic novels and had me sign them so he could then sell them for charity. He signed them too and had the artist Adi Granoff sign them.
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts, the stuff that happens. It's really weird.
Jonathan, thank you very much for sharing that. I'm sorry, we need to start, because if not, man, we're going to be.
Oh yeah. It's all right.
So okay, now before we start jumping into who Joe Ledger is and the campaign, I want to give a big shout out to a friend of the podcast, James Aquilone. He's the publisher of Monstrous Books. James, thank you very much for help setting up this interview and providing some of the preview pages. Jonathan, I've seen some of the preview pages. It's great.
The art team is doing a great job. And James is a lot of fun to work with. He works with Weird Tales magazine too.
That's right.
He's a hell of a lot of fun to work with. He's a hell of a great writer too. His Dead Jack stories crack me up. Well-written mysteries as well as horror as well as comedy, and he's a great touch. And he's very quickly becoming one of our top anthology editors in the business.
Yes, he is. All right.
He's a good friend.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So now, listeners, before we start talking about the campaign, I did a little bit of research on the character Joe Ledger. Now, Joe first appeared in the novel Patient Zero, and then there have been I need to pick up that book. And there are 10 books in this series, but I'm going to ask.
That's not correct. For some reason, Amazon has been saying there are 10 books in the series.
Okay.
There are not. The series never ended.
Okay. Yeah.
So what happened is the first 10 books, the main character worked for one secret organization.
Yes.
In book 11, he started to work for another secret organization. And there's 3 of those books out. So there are 13 novels in print. In fact, the most recent one, Cave 13, is in print. And by the time this airs, I will know whether this has won the Thriller Award or not. It's up for that award. And that award will be announced Saturday night. But I just finished the 14th Joe Ledger novel. There are 4 or 5 short story collections.
Yes.
And 2 anthologies where Brian Thomas Schmidt and I brought a bunch of my friends in who are writers and who are Joe Ledger fans to write Joe Ledger stories. And at one of the people who co-wrote a story was the actor Wayne Brady, who's currently Biz Broadway. He's a huge Joe Ledger fan.
That's so cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
And listeners, if Wayne Brady, he has been on Whose Line Is It Anyway in the 90s. He's the current host of Let's Make a Deal. Oh, holy cow.
And he's also a good guy. And again, he and I have become pretty good friends too. And he wants to pick my brain because he's interested in doing more writing. So we're gonna have some sessions where he's going to help try to coach him along to get with his ability to come up with ideas that fast and to improv. He's gonna be a fine writer without doubt. Be a fine writer, and he's gonna probably have a lot of fun with it too.
All right. So Jonathan, I'm sorry, I gotta ask the dumb question because there, as you see behind me all my boxes of comics, and you haven't seen my stacks of books. We're talking Star Trek books, Tom Clancy. Anyway, so I have to ask the dumb question: who is Joe Ledger?
Fair enough. Okay, so Joe Ledger is a former Army Ranger turned Baltimore police detective who was scouted out of the Baltimore PD by an organization called originally the Department of Military Sciences. It's a very covert organization. They go up against terrorists who have cutting edge weird science weapons. Each book is a different kind of science. The first book, Patient Zero, deals with a retasked prion disease, a form of spongiform encephalopathy, like mad cow disease, that creates a zombie-like plague in the book. Each book, again, has a different plague, a different bioweapon or threat. The thing that makes Joe so much fun to write is he is, at best, psychologically speaking, damaged goods. Because of some childhood trauma, his psyche was splintered, and his best friend, a person who became his best friend, was his therapist, helped him kind of pare down the number of personalities he has to basically 3. One is called the modern man. That's the version of Joe that would have been dominant had he not gone through that childhood trauma. There's the cop, the version who he became, who is the analytical problem solver and the person who wants to get between the good guys and harm. He wants to. And then there's a third aspect, variously known as the warrior or the killer, who is very primal, very savage, and will go to war against the bad guys without mercy, but he's never going to harm the good guys.
Okay, yeah.
He will do unspeakable things in defense of them, but he is never going to harm. because what he is he's the rage that exists when the innocent have been hurt. That's essentially what defines that character. His boss is Mr. Church, who is a very mysterious former spec ops guy himself, but has an intriguing past. And my readers have been trying for 15 years now to figure out who he really is, because we know his real name is a fake. And because now 2,000 of them have guessed who he is out of all the readers, I decided that the next book I write in the series for 2026 will be his origin story. So Joe Ledger is also one of those ubiquitous characters. I can put him in any circumstance. Now, he's tough, he's capable, and he's also funny. He's very snarky with his humor. And one of the weird things is he's actually funnier than I am, and I don't understand how that works since I create the character. And instead of being political, he's not right or left. He's a humanist.
Yeah.
He doesn't like politics. He likes people, and he will. He doesn't. So he disapproves of anyone who puts party politics over the common welfare, which reflects a lot of my own personal views too. I'm a humanist, and he's very tough in a fight. He's extremely difficult to beat in a fight.
Yes.
I give him a lot of the stuff that I use, and some of the stuff that I also cultivated for when I was teaching Spec Ops and teaching SWAT team hand-to-hand combat. I use some of that in the books too. And he's a fun character, but he shows up in not just his own series, but 2 other series. In my Dead of Night series, which is, I wanted to tell a story about the zombie apocalypse where the science was rock solid. Epidemiologist with a parasite-driven plague, and it actually gets us to about 70% doable to a zombie apocalypse, which is scary. I was hoping for 20.
That's true too.
70%. But there's a 4-book series. Joe is in books 3 and 4 of that series. And then the sequel to that series, set 15 years later, takes place 15 years after the zombie apocalypse. And that series was actually written originally for teenagers, but a lot of adults read it. And Joe was in books 3 through 7 of that series. And that series, known as Rotten Ruin, is being made into film right now by Alcon Entertainment.
Oh, nice.
And Joe also appeared in the V-Wars comic book. He had a 3-issue arc in here. And that was a lot of fun too, because some of the art that they created for Joe is just really fantastic.
Yes.
A little based, those images are a little based on Charlie Hunnam. We change our opinion every 5 minutes about who would play the best Joe Ledger. And right now, and I can't name names.
No.
We are in very exciting discussions with a huge action film director. For a possible Joe Ledger TV series.
That's nice.
By the time this airs, I will know whether that's been optioned or not.
That is really nice. Listeners, I'm sorry. We got to keep going on because I know, like I said, if not, man, me and Jonathan are going to be talking about his possible TV series. We're going to swing back to the Marvel stunt team.
By the way, the reason that I got hired by Marvel in the first place is Axel Alonso, who was the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics at the time, saw this on a bookstall in LAX when he was flying from Los Angeles to New York, picked it up, read it, and then called me because he liked the way I handle action and dialogue. So it was Joe Ledger who got me into Marvel too.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. Sorry. We have to continue on. Okay. Hearts and Mind, a Joe Ledger and Violin adventure. Now, I know not to spoil anything, but basically, what is this story about?
Okay, well, first let me explain who Violin is. Yes. In the 4th Joe Ledger novel, he meets a woman who may or may not be what's known as a Dhampir, part human, part vampire.
Yes.
I never expressly say that it's the case, but she is older than she looks, stronger and faster than is humanly possible.
Yes.
And they're lovers for a while. They stop being lovers and become just allies later on. And they went up against a group called the Red Knights, which are genetically engineered vampires. So they're not supernatural. They're people with genetic anomalies who then were developed to be assassins for the church to counter the Tugis, not the Tugis, I'm sorry, the Hashashin, the assassins that were used by Islam in the later Crusades. So this was designed to counter those 2 guys.
Yes.
So the new book deals with the return of the Red Knights, and even though they were defeated in one book, not all of them were killed, and they've spread out and they're still there. And what we find out, and this is not a spoiler because it's going to be in the jacket, they're starting to steal internal organs and brains, and we don't know why. So Joe and Violin go to figure out why, and it becomes a pretty horrific, body horror story as it goes along. And it'll be an original, I think, 60 or 64 page graphic novel. And the art, Dave Acosta is doing the art. He did a bunch of other projects. A lot of people know him. He's very famous. Zach Atkinson is doing the colors, and he brings such a rich color palette that he elevates every panel. And and just a little side note, colorists are underappreciated in comics. When I did Marvel Universe versus the Punisher and that series, I was working with Goran Parlov, who's a Croatian artist, very famous, but he's a minimalist style, and I kind of like a photoreal style, like Scott Eaton. And I didn't know if his minimalist style, when I first met him, was going to carry the emotional weight I wanted. But then they gave Lee Loffridge as a colorist, and he did these monochrome, single tone color washes that gave it a cinematic feel.
Yes.
So I learned to appreciate what a colorist can bring to the game, and Zach is bringing that kind of game to this graphic novel. So I have a dream team of artists, and wait till you see what the covers are going to look like. Oh my God, they're fantastic. I'm actually going to frame both covers. There's an original and a variant cover. I'm going to frame them both because they're just absolutely beautiful.
Oh my God, I can't wait to see it. I really can't.
I can't wait to share them.
And yes, and I'm going to be, Jonathan, I'm not blowing smoke at you, because when this comes out, I'm definitely backing this.
Well, I hope people do. It's going to be a fun comic, and it's part of the launch of Crystal Lake's comic division.
Oh, okay.
Because they haven't done a lot of comics yet, and they want to do more, and so they're using backer kit to do it, which is kind of like Kickstarter. Especially since the economic downturn of 2008 and 9 and then COVID, the comics industry took a hard hit. So many comic book stores closed during COVID and didn't reopen and so on. So it's a risk for any comic company to put a comic out there without pre-funding it. And this allows the entire thing to be funded. The artists get paid, the letterer, the colorist, everyone gets paid. And they know it's financially successful because it's already paid.
Yes.
That way, we can just move on with it and have fun with it. So it's smart for especially a small company like Crystal Lake to be able to use crowdfunding as a way of getting the comic out there. IDW was actually one of the first companies that started doing this early on, like in 2009, 10, and they started doing these crowdfunding things. And it really helped. It helped getting a lot of creator-owned comics out there that might otherwise not get out there.
That's true.
And the backer kit itself, the crowdfunding thing itself, is also advertising for it. So it draws, even if somebody doesn't back the backer kit, which I hope they do, they'll know about it. So then they'll start reading reviews and hopefully jump in at that point.
Yes. Oh, okay. Thank you. Before I continue on, do you want to give out any other shout outs to anyone else on the creative team? You're right. Your artists, you already done your colorists.
Well, yeah. At the moment, those are the names I'm allowed to share.
Okay. All right.
Some information that'll be then shared when the backer kit itself goes live. Right. At the moment, there's like a pre-backer kit thing where you can sign up to be notified when it goes live.
Yes.
Which is their way of just gauging interest.
Yes.
So people can sign up for that. That doesn't cost me anything to sign up for. Then they get notified when it goes live, and then there'll be more information, more pages will be shared. I think the cover may be shared with that too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I think one image, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun because there's some great stuff coming.
Because the thing is that because like you said that this is already generating enough buzz, because I saw like there was like people almost about 575 to 600 people signed up to wait to see when this launches.
Yeah,
that is great. So, okay, what kind of tier rewards do you have in this campaign?
Well, those are still being worked out, but there's a couple that I can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Some will be Tuckerizations. Now, for those who don't know, a Tuckerization is when somebody has their name given to a character in a work of fiction.
Mm-hmm.
We do it all the time. We writers do it all the time. Like I have a lot of contests where people, if they win the contest, I'll name a character after them in one of my Joe Ledger novels.
Okay.
And in fact, in the latest Ledger novel, Cave 13,
Yes.
the guy won a charity auction for this, and instead of just putting him as a character, I made him the villain of the book.
Oh my God,
so I do that sort of thing. So we're going to do, I think, 3 to 5 Tuckerizations. I forget how many. I think it's somewhere in that zone, and they can choose to either be in the comic or the next Joe Ledger novel.
My God.
And that's a lot of fun. And also, we're going to be doing. What's the other thing that I can talk about? Hold on. I need to check something real quick as we're talking here.
Oh, that's fun.
To see what I can talk about.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to be doing some signed books too.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And no, weirdly, I can't pull up my emails. But so, well, the Tuckerizations are my favorite part of it too, because it's fun. I get to know the people.
Yes.
If we get it in time, we can, if they want, we can have the character actually drawn to look like the person, which is a lot of fun. I do not promise that things will end well for the characters. In fact, early on, and I did a Punisher Max comics for Marvel.
Yes.
And one of the characters in there is named after a friend of mine from back east. And the guy, the real person, is a real nice guy, family guy. He's a Quaker. The character is a murderous pornographer. But my friend was so delighted to have a character named after him in a book. Even though so it's kind of funny how that works.
Mm-hmm.
So
that is so cool.
A bit of information over here.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh no, apparently I don't. So unfortunately I can't share the information because I don't know what I'm cleared to share, and I can't pull it up for some reason. Tuckerizations are my favorite part anyway.
Yeah.
We're also going to do signed copies. That's going to be one of the so they were asking me how many I'd be willing to sign. I'm like, I'll sign as many as you send me.
Yeah.
Any writer who says that it's too many copies for them to sign should be horsewhip.
All right. So when this one is a success, and it will be a success, do you have any more Joe Ledger graphic novels that you're planning?
I have
planning.
At least 8 ideas in mind if this is successful. I would like it to continue. I would like to do a whole library of Joe Ledger comics.
Yes.
He is my favorite character I've ever created. And, he's in 50 short stories, about 30 novels of different types. I've even had characters, friends of mine borrow the character to name check in their stories. He's just a really popular, likable character. And it'll be fun to bring him a little further into the comics world because, the V-Wars comic, that was quite a few years ago. So a lot of people don't know him now. And I'd like the new comic book readers to have fun with the character that it gives me the most fun to write.
All right. I'm going to ask, I'm slowly start wrapping things up. So, but let's say if someone misses out on this campaign, will this graphic novel be available in someone's website in the future?
Well, it'll definitely be available through Crystal Lake, and I don't know if we'll wind up in bookstores or comic book stores with it, but definitely Crystal Lake. So yeah, it'll always be available. And like all books, my local bookstores, Mysterious Galaxy and Artifact here in San Diego, they can get any of my work. And since they're my local stores, they'll let me know and I'll come in and sign them. So.
And you know what? Actually, I'll hold off this one other question till now I want to move on to, because you have some books coming out this summer. Why don't you start, talking about those?
Well, by the time this comes out, this will already be out. We're recording this on May 27th. This comes out May 28th. This is the first book in a brand new series. Series is called Necrotech. The imprint is called Weird Tales Presents. Weird Tales made a deal with Blackstone Publishing, and what this book is, it's deep space cosmic horror. The conceit of it, and again, it's not a spoiler because you'll learn it in the jacket text. While trying to develop matter teleportation on it, they're doing the experiment on a space station near Jupiter. Instead of sending this capsule of instruments, test instruments, it winds up, a huge accident happens and it teleports the entire space station 54,000 light years away to the far side of the Milky Way galaxy. They'll never be able to come home.
Yes.
And what they find is that creatures like Cthulhu and so on that came to Earth came here because they were afraid of what's out there. And now we're out there. So we're face to face with the outer gods and I'm not saying person, an army of trillions of Shoggoths, shape-shifting monsters from they were introduced in the Mountains of Madness and other stories. And I had so much fun. And the humans get caught up in a war that's been raging for tens of thousands of years. And one of the challenges is that space station only has a few fighter jets or fighter planes, and the pilots keep dying because they're up against more sides. But the reason it's called necrotech, because it's necromancy and technology, their ghosts are resurrected to pilot crashed alien spaceships and bring them back. They're kind of like somewhere in the Pacific Rim, Jaeger type thing, but they're piloted by ghosts and they're shapeshifters. So they can shift from plane to giant robot to tank to whatever and fight the Shoggoths because their ships are also shapeshifters. So the big battles of shapeshifting giant robots piloted by ghosts. I had such a ridiculous amount of fun writing the book. It's scary, it's philosophical, it has action and humor and sex and everything else in it. And it is possibly my favorite novel I've ever done. And it's my 50th novel. So
congratulations.
I'm writing my 51st now, which is the sequel to this called Cold War. But it comes out, tomorrow, and we're actually launching it at StokerCon, which is this weekend, the Bram Stoker Awards.
Oh, I'm so
honored with that. And we're going to be launching that, plus a special, I can show it now because this will be up after, but we even did a special Weird Tales issue of Bram Stoker Awards issue of Weird Tales magazine that'll be launched this weekend too. But so that's my first book coming out this year. I've got the third book in my epic fantasy trilogy, the Kagan the Dam series. The third book, Dragon in Winter, comes out in August. I've got 3 short story collections coming up. One is a collection of my Monk Addison short stories, my second favorite character I've ever created. A haunted PI, very strange sort of guy. There's a collection of my horror short stories coming out, and then in October, one of my favorite projects I've ever done, a book called Shadow and Verse. I'm a huge fan of poetry, and especially dark poetry. So I wanted to do a fundraiser to raise money for scholarships so that emerging writers can go to the more useful conventions like Superstars in Colorado Springs, which is all about the business of writing and publishing. So what I did is I contacted 90 some of my friends in the business and said, look, I want you to pick a classic public domain poem that deals with darkness. We get everything from Shakespeare to Robert Frost, Edgar Allan Poe, everybody. So they're not writing the poems. I just wanted them to pick a poem and then write 1 to 3 paragraphs of commentary about it. So the first person I asked was Neil Gaiman. He said yes. Second person I asked was R.L. Stine. He said yes. We've got 90 some people, a lot of writers, some actors, like some of my friends from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Charisma Carpenter, who played Cordelia, Amber Benson, who played Tara. They contributed. The screenwriter Shane Black contributed. But all these people, and it's useful to have a lot of creative friends. And then I 4 healthcare professionals to write essays on darkness. So the book Shadows in Verse will be out in October in time for Halloween. And all of the money, 100% of the proceeds, will go to scholarships for emerging creatives. So that's going to be fun.
Oh my, Jonathan, thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you. And it's so cool that you want to make sure that up and coming writers, get the help, that they're able to get financial help to, like you said, to really go to to learn about the important side of the business of writing,
Yeah.
because that's the thing that people, that these writers need to know about.
Yeah, I like to see creatives get paid for their work,
Yes,
And figure I had all that help from Bradbury, Matheson, DeCamp, and so on when I was a kid. Cost me nothing, and it didn't do anything didn't put any money in their pocket.
yes,
It was just generosity of spirit.
yes.
So I learned that from them as a kid, and I've tried to make sure that influences everything I do. In fact, Ray Bradbury had given me the 10 Commandments of how to be a great writer.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be a jackass. Don't be a jackass. Don't be a jackass, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I translate that a little bit into be a good guy.
Yeah.
And so projects like this help. That's also with Weird Tales. I like bringing in writers who may be brand new or underrepresented and give them a global forum to be able to show their short stories, their flash fiction, and their poetry.
Jonathan, thank you for sharing that. Thank you very much. I've got 5 more questions because I want to start wrapping this up. I don't want to take too much of your time.
I'll answer your questions. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So, okay. Let's see. I know, unfortunately, when this comes up, it'll be past already. You're going to be at the Stalker Con this weekend, June 1st and June 2nd.
Yeah.
And then any other conventions during the summer?
The only other convention I'm doing this year, because I'm writing a novel every 3 months, so I've got back-to-back deadlines,
Yes.
So the next one I'm doing is San Diego Comic-Con, and I live here in San Diego, so it's and I'm there every year. I just did WonderCon, which is their smaller con, and I'm already lining up a whole bunch of panels to do, presentations to do, and we also do the Scribe Awards there, which is the awards for media tie-in writers, people who write in worlds like writing the X-Files or the Wolfman or whatever. So we give out those awards there as well. And it's also a great place to do business with folks that you wouldn't ordinarily, have face time with. Publishers in Australia, people in Italy, they come there for Comic-Con, and the industry professionals get a chance to socialize as well as do business.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, it's 140,000 pop culture nerds, so it is me and my people. Very much my people. I'm a unavowed, unapologetic nerd.
Mm-hmm. All right. What was your most favorite moment from a convention, whether it's a creator or even as a fan?
They vary. I've had a lot of them. Stan Lee coming up to my booth that time, but the most recent really cool one, I was at a convention in Pensacola, Florida called Pensacon.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the green room grabbing some food, and the guy in front of me turned around and said, "Oh, you're Jonathan Maberry." And it's Christopher Eccleston, one of the Doctor Who's, the first Doctor Who when they brought it back.
Yes.
He's been reading my novels, knows my books, and was even fishing around to see if any of my upcoming TV or film projects had room for him. And so of course I passed it along to my agent. But we had a great time talking. It was so surprising. I'm always surprised when I run into somebody, especially somebody famous, who's read my stuff. It's never, my ego's not big enough to assume that's happening.
Yeah.
And we had a great conversation. He's a really nice guy. Had a great time. So that was a lot of fun. And I guess maybe the first time I was on a panel, I forget which horror convention it was. Might have been Horror Find in New Jersey. I'm not sure. I was on a panel with George Romero, and we were talking backstage, and we hit it off so well. We share the same politics, the same worldview, a lot of friends in common, and that began a friendship that lasted up until he died.
Yes.
And he was a really good guy. In fact, one of my comic projects was a prequel comic to a script he had been working on that would have been his last zombie film called Road of the Dead. Mm-hmm. So I got to write, after he passed, got to write the prequel comic Highway to Hell. Had a lot of fun with that.
Oh, I got it. Now I have to hunt that one down. Okay. All right. 2 more questions. Have you and your family been to Hawaii?
Yes, I was keynote at the Kauai Writers Conference in 2016, and they asked me to stay longer to teach some workshops. And I was like, oh, gee, I have to spend another 10 days in Kauai. Twist my we had the best. My wife and I went, did all the stuff like going to where they shot the opening for Raiders of the Lost Ark, that rope thing,
Yeah.
did all of that. Went to a couple of the luau's that were actually for the people who live there, not for tourists.
Oh,
We
yes,
made
yes.
friends with some of the folks who worked at the hotel, and they invited us a completely different experience and a lot more down to earth, a lot more fun.
Yes.
And so we had a great time. And my son, he's been there many times, been to several of the islands. He had a buddy whose family owns a macadamia nut farm in Maui, and he spent an entire summer there. And he just got back from Hawaii about 5 months ago from another. I forget how many times he's been there. We all love Hawaii, so it's one of those places where if you haven't been there, what the hell is wrong with you? Nicest people I ever met anywhere. They're the only people only like ethnic group I've met that is as nice as the people in Tuscany. Because I'm from Philadelphia. Nobody's nice in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
But generous of spirit. If you are trying to actually find out about culture and
Mm-hmm.
not ask tourist questions, you learn about the people who live there. And it is a wonderful mix of different cultures, and the one that's developed in Hawaii itself, in the islands, just fantastic. It still amazes me when I run into people who still don't understand that Hawaii is a state.
Yeah, especially nowadays. Yeah.
But great food, great art, great music, great people. There's nothing about it I didn't love. And there's chickens everywhere for some reason. Everywhere in Hawaii, you run and there's chickens just running all over the place. There are 15 different stories about why there are so many chickens. I don't know if I believe the one about they escaped during a storm, but it's the one they tell the tourists.
Yes, that's the one that they tell. All right, so Jonathan, before I ask the last question, I have to tell you, on Oahu, we do have comic book conventions. I'm gonna make it. I don't know any of the organizers, but I think someone's got to invite you down.
If they invite me, I'll start packing right then.
You'd
And
be
now
like,
that I live in San Diego, I'm a lot closer too. Because when I went to the other one, we were living in San Diego at the time. That's right. But yeah, I absolutely love Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
I even know where I can even picture my favorite beachside restaurant. It was called Lava Lava in Hawaii, in Kauai. Every morning we would sit there, we'd have great breakfast, talk to folks. I loved it. There's nothing about Kauai I didn't like, except for the fact that I can't drive there easily.
Yeah.
I don't have a submarine.
Final question. Any closing words to our listeners?
Any what?
Any closing words to our listeners?
Yeah, if you're not a fan of Joe Ledger, give Joe Ledger a try. He's a lot of fun. There's a lot of books. Weirdly, unlike the other action series, it's not gun porn, which a lot of action series are. And a good half, maybe even a little more of our audience is female, which is not for thrillers. But I have a humanist character who's not a chauvinist pig. He's not trying to jump into bed all the time,
Yes.
Good guy. So that's one thing. Also, if you're a writer and you're listening to this, if you go to my website, jonathanmaberry.com, and the trick is to spell my last name right. It's Maberry, not M-A-Y. On jonathanmaberry.com, there is a page called Free Stuff for Writers. And it's exactly that. There's a query letter. There's one of my Captain America comic book scripts. So you can see how those are written. Mm-hmm. There's novel formats, how to write a synopsis, all these different useful files, all free downloadable PDFs for writers. And also there's links to, what I write, what I do, and clearly I'm having fun doing this, so come and join the fun. Also, every Thursday on Pacific time, 4 to 5 Pacific time on Thursdays, I do an Ask Me Anything on Facebook.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That is nice.
Yeah, it's nice to talk to the fans, get to know who they are, and find out what they want to know about what I write.
All right, Jonathan, mahalo. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to interview you. I wish you all the success with this Joe Ledger graphic novel campaign. I also want to give a big mahalo to James for help setting up this interview and showing me some of the advanced preview pages. Yeah. Now, are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader, please check out the original graphic novel, Hearts and Minds, a Joe Ledger and Violin adventure. Now, this backer kit campaign starts on June 11th. And Jonathan, like I said, I'm definitely going to back this. This looks
Cool.
good.
And I hope you enjoy the book too.
And then also and listeners, we as comic book readers, we start off in comics and we start reading comics, and then we start branching off into like novels and stuff. Now, if you guys get a chance, please also check out Jonathan's other works, such as the V-War comic book series. I need to check that out. I have to go back and look for that. And also, I want to check out your Joe Ledger novels, like the first two books, like the Patient Zero and the Dragon Factory. Oh man, those sound great. I read some of the, what the story's about, but
I have a lot of fun with those books.
Okay.
And doing the research is fun because I work with world-class scientists to make sure my science is accurate. So it's very hard to tell where the science leaves off and the fiction begins.
Oh, okay, that sounds good. All right. I want to thank Drew, the host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys. Aloha.
Aloha. Take care.
Our LCS is Cowabunga Comics out of Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, and their mail order company, Deep Discount Comics. And we went there, and we were actually invoice number 00001. We were the very first their very first customer, which was kind of cool. They've been nothing short of fantastic, customer service wise, discounts. They were very close, if not the same or better than DCBS on a lot of things. Over and above. Customer service wise, always taking care of us, going the extra mile, so responsive, getting instantaneous responses back to questions about things, and to the point where knowing the stuff you like and anticipating your needs and having it suggested that you might want to add this to your order already before you even have to think about it. That's kind of cool. Really quality experience. So we love working with Cowabunga and Deep Discount, and that's why they're in our show notes every single episode and have been for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes. That we leave them there because we like them. They're cool, good people. That's why they're in there. By God, they'd tell you to, if you've got a local comic book shop that you love, stay with them, because everybody needs to support their local comic shops. But if you're looking, check them out. You can check them out in the show notes. There's plenty of ways to get a hold of them. Either get on their list, just so you can check and see what kind of FOC and pre-order stuff they have and the discounts, and they'll send it to you each month, get you on that email list. And you can check out their shop, because they have a great shop of exclusive Cowabunga variants. Amazing stuff. Yes, they've always been there for us, and we take them for granted. So there you go. Now you know.